joined by Wolfgang Munchau, President of Eurointelligence. He is live in Brussels for us now. Mr. Munchau, very good to have you on the programme. Thank you for your time. And so I want to start by asking you about your expectations for next week, based on what we've been hearing over the past few days from ECB President Mario Draghi, German Chancellor Angela Merkel, and of course Nicolas Sarkozy. Do you think that we are going to see solid progress towards fiscal integration?
I think what we've seen, or what we're going to see, is a process. Draghi has made it very clear that the ECB is willing to act, but the politicians have to act first. And your report made it very clear where the problem is now. They have a week to make an agreement to get a fiscal union of the type that Angela Merkel proposes, rather than the one that Nicolas Sarkozy proposes. And then, and as your report also made clear, if Merkel gets her way, she might, and she will have to, compromise on Eurobonds. Now, that would be the best outcome, a fiscal union and a Eurobond, but we might not see either. We might see, the kind of fiscal union that Sarkozy had in mind, a very loose fiscal union with governments essentially remaining in control, and no Eurobonds. And that will be a weak outcome, and the ECB will probably not take comfort from such an outcome, and will probably not do as much, or cannot do as much, as it should do.
Despite the rally that we've seen over the past few days, when you look at this sort of developments in the bond markets, if you like, just over the past few weeks, and what we had seen with Germany, with Italy, it seems as though the stakes are rising all the time. So with this in mind, I'm just wondering, how difficult is it going to be to resolve these key differences between Angela Merkel and Nicolas Sarkozy, with Merkel on the one hand still not really in favour of Eurobonds, as you say, and then of course Sarkozy not keen on relinquishing any sovereignty, if you like.
Yeah, we're still 1 week away from the summit, and what we're hearing now doesn't surprise me at all. Ahead of every summit there are different views. So what really matters is, will they get the deal together in 1 week's time? They're negotiating, they're putting themselves up in position. Merkel saying no to Eurobonds, Sarkozy saying no to a transfer. So the question is, can they get the deal together? I don't think they'll get it together before the summit. They will get it together at the summit, or they will not get it together. And if they don't get it together, it will be very serious. I suspect that will be the end of it. So this summit, and everybody knows, and the central bankers have been unusually outspoken. They say we have a financial crisis, a structural, a systemic financial crisis, and if there is no agreement, then this crisis will be such that various member states will start to leave, probably starting next month. Yeah. So this is basically our last chance to get this together. Now, it's impossible to predict whether they will get this together. This is a very complex political negotiations. Everybody knows it is important, it is vital, and it'll go right down to the line and see whether, and everybody has to see whether they can sell the agreement back home. I mean, Merkel will find it difficult to sell a Eurobond back home after all that she has said. So it's going to be, it depends on how courageous they are in the end.
Mr. Munchau, we've got Bob Janjuah in the studio with me. He is from Nomura. And so, Bob, what do you make of those comments from Wolfgang Munchau that, well, I suppose even if they do get it together, as he says, and we get some sort of agreement towards fiscal integration, closer fiscal union come next week, well, there's significant implementation risk. They're going to have to take it home and sell it to the electorate.
Well, it's a few things. First of all, I thought the end of October was the most crucial summit of all time. That seems to have come and gone. I think to expect European politicians to come up with definitive plans, it's incredibly hopeful. I think the best we can get next week is an agreement to agree to something. That's not going to be enough for the ECB. So I'm firmly of the view, short term, that whilst markets may want to enjoy another few days of upside, I think we should be ready for disappointment around the night. Do I think that means breakup? No.
Yeah. So then, Wolfgang, let me put that to you. Because you seem to be suggesting that, we're reaching a make or break moment with the European Monetary Union. Would it be enough just to see, I mean, even if we didn't get a solid agreement, even if they started to make, even if we got indications that we were moving towards treaty change, EU treaty change, would that be enough to stem the deterioration in bond markets?
I mean, an agreement to have further discussions will obviously be not enough. And if that's the premise that you're making, then the Eurozone will be over next year. So, I think everybody knows that. So people here are not quite as, ignorant about the situation. So I think I think the chances are not zero. There is a small chance that they'll get it together. Whether, I have not been the greatest optimist in this crisis, but I would not put the chance at zero. Now, the maximum they can do, just to look at the maximum they can do, they cannot implement a fiscal union. Obviously, there is an implementation risk. They have to have an intergovernmental conference. Various institutions would have to approve. The European Parliament would have to get involved. This is a complicated process, so there won't be immediate implementation anyway. And obviously, if the German Parliament were to say no, then the whole thing would be off the table anyway, and we will be in a disaster. But I would not underestimate if the impact of a statement to say that we, the European Council, we want to have a fiscal union, and at the end of that process, maybe a three-stage process, as it was with the euro itself, at the end of that three-stage process, we want a Eurobond. If they say that clearly and loudly, and if they don't have too many conditional clauses in their sentences, that may well do the trick.
Still joined by Wolfgang Munchau, President of Eurointelligence, and Bob Janjuah of Nomura, of course. Mr. Munchau, you were speaking before about the fact that we're reaching a critical point in the debt crisis. And I'm just wondering about the dilemma that the Germans are in right now, because given the lack of fiscal discipline, they would argue that we have seen with their Eurozone partners, you cannot really, there's only so much you can blame them for being perhaps somewhat reluctant when it comes to the issuance of Eurobonds. Is it, in the end, going to have to be a purely political decision on the part of Angela Merkel, in that she'll have to decide that she doesn't want to be the Chancellor that essentially presides over the demise of the euro?
I suspect that's very much the case. But she cannot alone make the decision. She cannot just give in to Eurobonds and Sarkozy not giving in to fiscal union. That is a compromise that is simply not possible. And if that was the only thing on the table, she would say no. I have no doubt about that. So the compromise would have to be, fiscal union and Eurobonds, not some halfway house of the two. That would be a bad compromise. Now, what you said about the Germans being concerned about everybody else's fiscal discipline, we have to somehow put this into perspective. Germany has a debt level of about 80%, which is very much close to the Eurozone average. And Germany, too, has broken the Stability Pact in the past. So, Germany is not as virtuous as the Germans sometimes think, and the others are not as bad as the Germans sometimes think. And, in fact, if I looked at the Eurozone, at its problems that it is now, I would think that, except for Greece, of course, the real issue for the Eurozone is not so much fiscal discipline. The real issue is very much the banking system, the private sector disintegration, or the private sector divergences. That's much more important than the fiscal side.
Yeah, so, Bob, quickly, your thoughts on that. Is the divergence between these economies actually more important than perhaps the lack of fiscal discipline, if you like?
Yes, and it's a purely political project, and I honestly think what Merkel wants is what's going to happen.
All right. Thanks very much. Well, Wolfgang Munchau, President of Eurointelligence in Brussels, thank you very much indeed. Wonderful to have you on the programme. Bob